Good evening, Bermuda. Welcome to another Government of Bermuda Facebook Live. My name is Aderonka Batamosi Wilson, and I'm your moderator for this evening. For this evening's discussion, we have the Minister of Health, the Honorable Kim Wilson, and the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Renee Ming. Both of them will give an overview of the regulations that come into place tomorrow as part of the stay-at-home order. Minister Wilson, we'll start with you. Please give us an overview. Minister, you're on mute.
Thank you, Aderonka, and good evening to everyone. Today, as we complete our final day of the 7-day period of the stay at home, this short, sharp stop was implemented to allow for our essential contact workers to continue to catch up with the large volumes of cases that we've seen in recent weeks, particularly in light of the UK variant, as well as to increase our vaccination and our testing drives. Please remember, members of the public, that the stay-at-home order is still in effect. However, obviously, some of the regulations that we'll speak about in a few moments, and if you're attending any of the permitted businesses, such as the vaccination center or the COVID testing site and the like, you would obviously be able to roam, but for all intents and purposes, you are still required to remain in your premises, in home, during the next phase, in which we will be discussing in a few more minutes. Today, I will have announced that there are 36 new cases since the last update, and regrettably, 20 people have died due to the coronavirus. 40 people are in hospital, and 6 persons are in intensive care as a result of COVID-19. In the midst of public frustration due to this renewed period of restrictions on our movements around the island, I urge each and every one of us to pause for a moment and think of those persons who within our community have been adversely impacted by COVID-19, especially those who have lost loved ones to the virus. We must all recognize that these restrictions on our movements are designed to prevent more families having to suffer the pain and anguish of having to bury loved ones due to the coronavirus. We as a government are also acutely aware of the adverse impact COVID-19 is having on many businesses and families alike. And I know that it feels like the progress that we've made in previous months is at danger of being erased. However, even in the midst of this outbreak, we have cause for optimism. We have been able to test widely, isolate positive cases, and ensuring that people know their coronavirus status. Our vaccination program has continued, and we are very encouraged that this past week we vaccinated over 5,000 people within the week, and that's great news. And our contact tracers continue working around the clock in order to trace and investigate positive cases. The primary message that I'd like to reiterate to the public this evening, prior to our discussing the adjustments to the regulations, is that we cannot escape this pandemic if we do not do all that we can to commit to following the public health guidelines. As we revise the restrictions that we'll discuss, I must restate that the UK variant of the coronavirus is extremely contagious, and the symptoms can be very difficult to pinpoint. Symptoms include cough, tiredness, headache, muscle ache, and sore throat. And if you experience any of these symptoms, please contact your doctor immediately and make an appointment to get tested. And likewise, if anyone that you know that you've been in contact with has also experienced any of those symptoms, you too must go and get tested. As a reminder, each and every one of us, again, has a role to play in stopping the spread of the COVID, and following public health guidelines, wearing our masks, practice good hand hygiene, maintain physical distancing, download the We Health Bermuda app, as well as, if you haven't already done so, book your appointment to get vaccinated, because vaccinations work. And Aranka, just really quickly with respect to the public health COVID-19 emergency powers stay-at-home regulations, amendment regulations, I just want to provide some a quick overview, and I know Minister Ming will also be providing further details. The curfew in effect will be from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m., with businesses that are permitted to operate under the regulations doing so between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Schools and daycares, they will remain closed except for teachers and lecturers that need to enter the facility to accommodate remote learning. Schools, nurseries, and daycare facilities that have been approved by the Ministry of Health to provide care or supervision for Essential workers are allowed to continue opening. Remote working needs to continue for employers, including public offices where practicable. With respect to recreation, you can go to the beach, the park, railway trail, as well as the playgrounds alone or with your household members only. And you can also enjoy recreational boating, but only with your household. The main message to these restrictions is that you must not mix households. That is incredibly important. We've seen that it's the mixing of households that happened way back in February, as well in recent weeks, which is causing these outbreaks. So again, the regulations are designed to allow for more economic activity. However, at the same time, mixing of households is still prohibited. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Wilson. Minister Meng, please share a few words.
Good afternoon, good evening, Bermuda, and greetings from the beautiful old town of St. George's today. The Ministry of National Security can confirm that as of 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, April the 20th, Bermuda will move out of the current period and into a new curfew period. However, the public should note that some restrictions will be in place during the curfew, which I will outline shortly. But here are some of the key reminders. As of tomorrow morning, the mixing of households remains prohibited, and the Bermuda Police Service will be strictly enforcing this regulation. Remote working will continue to be mandatory. However, in specific industries such as retail and food service, where we have relaxed the regulations to allow for their reopening, we are working with our employer stakeholders and partners to ensure a testing framework for employees before they return to work. This is to ensure the safety of employees and the public. Here are some additional updated regulations that we wish the public to be aware of. As I noted earlier, the current stay-at-home period finishes at 5 a.m. tomorrow, and we moved into a different curfew time, which will be from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. each day. The Bermuda Police Service, the Bermuda Reserve Police, and the Royal Bermuda Regiment will be working in partnership during the curfew hours to ensure that residents are abiding by the regulations. Permitted businesses will continue to be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Retail stores, including pet stores, will be permitted to open for curbside service and delivery services. Restaurants and food service will resume for takeout and delivery only. Restaurants and food service must be subject to all necessary public health precautions. The Tynes Bay drop-off facility will reopen for its usual operating hours. Residents should adhere to the alphabetical system when going to Tynes Bay. Grocery stores will continue to operate on the alphabetical system. Laundromats will be permitted to open, and similar to last year, they will be open by appointment with one household member at a time to reduce and minimize the chances of mixing. Licensed fishermen and registered commercial farmers will be permitted to sell local fish and local produce, respectively, at the roadside, and also to engage in delivery. Construction and landscaping services will be able to resume. Courier services will be permitted to operate. Parks will reopen for the public to enjoy, but again, the mixing of households is still unlawful and will be strictly enforced. Recreational boating will be allowed, but again, the mixing of households is unlawful and will strictly be enforced. Even though we are relaxing some of the restrictions, we still want people to adhere to the regulations in place. Please do not mix households. If you don't need to be out and about, please stay home. Please ensure that you follow the health guidelines in place. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the community for their sacrifice, cooperation, and compliance this last week. I recognize that this was a challenging time for our country. However, the overriding goal was to bring us to a standstill to try and slow down the spread of this virus. COVID-19 has upended our daily lives for more than a year. We all have a part to play. It's on each and every one of us to keep our families and our communities safe. Do your part to think and act responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, and I'll invite Minister Wilson to come back and join us. Now, we have received quite a number of questions from members of the public. And for those of you who are watching and have not yet sent in any questions, please feel free to put your information under the Facebook post, put it in the comments, and we'll pick up questions from there. If you do not have access to Facebook, send an email to askus@gov.bm, askus@gov.bm, and we'll try our best to get through as many questions as we can in the next 20 minutes. Our time together is from 7:30 to 8. And we will have the commissioner, the Assistant Commissioner of Police, Martin Weeks, who has joined us, and the Chief Strategy Officer, Adine Rattery-Price, may join us a little later on. So let's get started with the questions. The first question, is it mandatory for retail businesses and hotel employees to be tested before returning to work?
And Aranka, there is a strong recommendation that persons that return to work that are finding themselves now as permitted businesses coming in force tomorrow morning, for them to get tested. We are working with the Chamber of Commerce, and hopefully they'll be able to assist in getting the messaging out that it is extremely important to know your status, and that if these persons are returning to work for their own safety, they should be tested, as well as for the customers to whom they will engage in. So that is strongly encouraged and recommended that that take place.
Thank you, Minister. Next question, and this is probably more of a mental health question. Can people who live alone form a bubble with one other family or person? The isolation is not good for my mental health. And that's a question that's come in. Minister?
Yeah, I certainly can understand that particular person's concern, and I know it's been raised a couple of times actually today. Regrettably, we are really trying to stick to adhering to the prohibition of not mixing of families. We certainly have helplines that are available for individuals that feel that the need to want to speak to somebody and communicate. On the other hand, I'm glad that we live in an age of an internet age, so everybody's got Facebook phones and the like, so that we can continue that engagement. But the sooner we're able to address the outbreak and reduce the positive cases and the positivity rating and the R factor and the like, we'll be able to get to a more normal existence. Unfortunately, though, at this point, we do need to ensure that the Section 4A, I think it is, in the regulations that speak to mixing of households is completely prohibited at this time.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I've got quite a number of questions around exercise. Are the limits to exercising outdoors, is it still 1 hour per day?
Yes, that is correct. 1 hour per day, up to 1 kilometer from their residence is what is permitted at this point in time under the new regulations.
And so can people ride their bikes?
Riding of bikes at this point still is not permitted. However, you can walk on the beach as long as you remain in your family bubble. You can walk on the railway trails. There's other activities that are now permitted with respect to recreation. However, we still are, again, it's prohibited from having any engagement with other persons during the course of that exercise with people that are not within your household.
And is swimming a part of it, Minister?
Well,
While we're still on exercise?
Presumably, if you're on the beach and the water looks good, you can stick your toe in. Again, making sure that we maintain our physical distancing and remaining within our household bubbles.
Okay, thank you. Parks were mentioned, and so you've said that they are open. What about golf courses?
Golf courses are also open. However, the club themselves are closed. And again, no mixing of households. and the course itself you can continue to play golf, but you cannot go into the clubhouse. The clubhouses are not permitted businesses at this time, so unable to operate and open.
All right, so I'm just getting some messages. Minister, okay, so let's move on. Is interior construction allowed? For example, painters, can they go to paint indoors, or any carpenters if they're working indoors within a home setting?
The regulations do not permit that unless there are the premise is unoccupied. Again, we are trying to do our best to restrict the bubbling. So if the premises are unoccupied, then that particular activity would be permitted.
Would shared housekeepers return to all of the houses they are employed at? So, or should the shared housekeeper only be allowed to work at one home?
Well, actually, that is, unless I suspect there's an application that's been made for an exemption, that's not actually meant to be part of the permitted businesses at this point.
Okay, I understand there's, Minister Wilson, I understand there may be just some clarity that needs to be made around bike riding and the 1 hour limit on the exercising.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So I understand that there needs to be just some clarity around biking and the 1 hour exercise. I understand that there is, that you are not limited to 1 hour.
Let me just check. I'm looking at the act right now.
Okay. So we just need some clarity around that.
Yeah, maybe Minister Ming can assist in that.
I'm having a quick look as well for the cycling part.
Okay, thank you. While you're doing that, would you be able to let us know if car garages will be allowed to open so people can get their cars fixed?
Garages are able to operate as long as they can continue providing that service physically distanced and not mixing of households with respect to the staff.
Okay, thank you. The next question.
Anna Rocket, let me just clarify something.
Okay.
I thought I said this, but I was just not, somebody just said I didn't. For construction indoors, it is permitted, provided that the premises are uninhabited.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And are personal care services open tomorrow if it does not require the removal of masks? So for example,
No.
eyebrow waxing.
Look
No?
at my hair. No. Unfortunately, personal services are prohibited at this point.
Okay, thank you. Grooming services for pets, are they open?
That also is not a permitted business under the regulations at this point.
And can carpentry shops open?
Construction and landscaping, which would, I suspect, carpentry, painting, all of that comes under that. Persons engaged in construction, maintenance, or related services in accordance with the guidance where the site is either outdoors or is indoors if the premises are uninhabited. So if you're engaged in construction, maintenance, or related services, as long as the premises that you are providing that service are either outdoors or they're indoors, but the premises are uninhabited.
Excellent.
That's section
Thank
11A.
you.
Again, I think the emphasis, Anaranka, is that we don't want mixing of households. So if you're going in to provide a service and it's your household and it's somebody else's household that you're going into, that is not permitted. We are trying to provide minimal economic activity because we need the country to grow, but at the same time, we also recognize we need to minimize contact of persons from one household to another. So if it's indoors, the premises must be uninhabited.
All
Veronica,
right.
can I also add something
Go ahead.
here, because there
Yeah,
was
Ms.
something, we had lots of questions around building facility managers,
Mhm.
and that has been included in these new regs as well. Building custodians or other persons engaged to clean, maintain, or repair the premises of any business or facility which is not permitted to open under regulations. So persons will be able to go in and check and to ensure that the buildings are okay if the business is not open at this time.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both very much.
Okay, and Anaranka, that question concerning the recreation, access to beaches, parks, and playgrounds as well, the cycling is not permitted.
Cycling is not permitted?
Now.
Now, it is.
Yes.
It is permitted. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you very much. And just clarity, are we limited to 1 hour for exercise, or can we exercise for an hour and a half, 2 hours? Those folks that would like to be out a little longer.
Let me just confirm, but I believe it's still restricted to 1 hour a day within a kilometer, but let me get back to you about it. I'm just looking it up now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
And the hour is lifted. I'm looking at it now. So you can
Okay.
go out and knock yourself out for more than an hour for exercise.
And so presumably further than a kilometer from your house?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Will trucking services resume?
Trucking services are not permitted businesses at this point. However, there is, one moment. Delivery services. So if the trucking is relating to the delivery services, like the courier services, but trucking services are not a permitted business at this point in time under these regs.
Thank you very much. Can taxi drivers transport the general public as normal now, or should their jobs be limited to essential workers and people going to get tested and vaccinated?
I believe under the regs that because again, we're trying to minimize the mixing, that the taxi drivers are not permitted to effectively utilize the tools of their trade, like sitting outside of a grocery store. They have, if they are called for a service, then they could provide that service, like you say, to transport people to doctor's appointments, vaccinations, and so forth. But with respect to applying their trade, like sitting outside of a grocery store and running people around like they sometimes do, that's not envisioned by the regs.
Okay, thank you. Will pool cleaning companies be allowed to work?
A self-employed person is permitted to provide services provided that they are not mixing with households. So just a moment. So if a self-employed person is providing pool cleaning, then they are permitted to do so as long as they are, again, not mixing with the other households.
Thank you. Another question, are community gardens able to be accessed during this time?
As I started out by saying, the reality is that we are still under a stay-at-home order, and that the only time you should be exiting your property is to attend to any of the permitted businesses, such as the grocery store for your day of alphabet, or to get a COVID test or vaccination test. But again, we're trying to minimize mixing of businesses, and I would believe it's not envisioned to be covered under these regulations.
Minister Ming, if somebody wants to apply for exemption, how would they go about doing that?
So the exemption form can be found on the government website, which is forms.gov.bm. And there's an online application that can be completed, and it goes directly into the team for processing.
Thank you very much. And can you just speak to the form? I've got a question here. Where can people find the list of permitted businesses?
The permitted businesses would be in the regulations that that have come out. So this set of regulations list the permitted businesses. Actually, I'm pulling up my first one. And you can find them right there. So it's like the hospital, the banks. Let me pull it up. Let me read them out for you, Adirondacka, so that that person is clear in what the permitted businesses are.
Okay, thank you.
Seems like we have so many paper, so much paper. Hold on. Permitted businesses means any of the following: retail, grocery store, pharmacy, bank, gas station, office of a registered health professional, clinic, hospital, or other health facility, including a veterinarian surgery.
Thank you. And so the question around staying at home and people being required to stay at home, can those that don't go to work, can those who are at home only move around on alphabet shopping days? So for W, it's Wednesday and Saturday. Are those the only days that those people should be able to move around?
If they're going to the grocery store, that those are the only days they're permitted to go to the grocery stores. Pharmacies is a little different because there are no alphabetical requirements, so to speak, for attendance at a pharmacy, but certainly for the grocery stores, as you've indicated, those would be the days they'd be able to utilize that service.
Thank you. I think I have a question on enforcement. So this may be for Mr. Weeks. How are you going to ensure people don't mix households?
Well, Adirondacka, we get a lot of calls, funnily enough. We get a lot of people calling the 211 number. We get a lot of people who write into our online portal. And we also drive around, you know, our cars are on the road all the time. And we do see when a number of cars are parked outside of a residence, and that has led us to a couple of house parties just this weekend. So we'll be out, people will tell us, and we'll be out there looking as well just to see where it's obvious. You know, obviously we're not going into people's houses looking to see who's in there and checking their names, but you know, where it's obvious that people are mixing households, then you can expect a bang on the door.
Excellent, thank you. I have another question. Why isn't government encouraging more businesses to offer delivery, as many individuals are unable to leave their homes to collect items?
Actually, we are encouraging that. That's why we're allowing for certain retail establishments to open to do either curbside services or alternatively online shopping. So that is encouraged. And if you're a permitted business that has that mode of operation with respect to delivery services, then that is certainly what is being encouraged.
Excellent. And so another question, can you please repeat and list what the alphabet days for shopping are?
Mondays and Thursdays for persons whose surnames begin with the letters A to F. Tuesdays and Fridays for persons whose surnames begin with the letters G to Q. Wednesday and Saturdays for persons whose surnames begin with the letters R to Z. Sundays shall be reserved for the following: persons aged 55 years and over, disabled persons, and that's it, and disabled persons. And then there's persons who fall within schedules 1 and 2 can visit at any time. But the ABCs are as I just read, and I'm sure we can probably get that on some kind of, maybe DCI can help facilitate putting up another release or something with the ABC shopping days. But
Yeah.
it is the same as last time.
Yes, Minister, we absolutely will make sure that
Thank
people
you.
get that information.
Thank you.
I have another question about children not being allowed into grocery stores with their parents. Are children permitted to go into grocery stores on their name with their parents on their appropriate day?
There's no prohibition for that, that the children can accompany the parent to the grocery store. I know what we've spoken about previously with respect to guidance is you don't necessarily bring in, if obviously you have to bring your children, particularly if they're minors, into the grocery store, but it's certainly probably more beneficial for you as a family to minimize how many people you're taking into the grocery store with you. So you can be in and out quicker as opposed to potentially remaining in the grocery store and getting potential exposure.
Thank you. I have another question from a pest control and fumigation company owner. Can you confirm that we are able to carry out external pest control treatments at people's houses? And are they allowed to treat inside people's homes if no one is inside the home during the service?
I'm just looking and seeing, because again, that similar provision about self-employed persons working alone or with members of their household only. So presumably if that person's pest control businesses and they're self-employed, section 11C allows for self-employed persons who are unable to work remotely, provided that they do not come in contact at their place of work with anybody who is not a member of their household. So I would say that if they are providing that service and the place is uninhabited at the time, then that presumably would be okay. Again, though, but not mixing households. So if they're working with somebody else and their work colleague is from a different household, that would not be permitted.
Also, in addition to that, section 11D3 reads persons engaged in pest control for any business or facility. So the person does have the authority in accordance to the regulations.
All right, so Minister, I just want to provide clarity for people during the upcoming week. You cannot go, if you can work at home, it's mandatory for you to continue to work at home. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, if you're working from home but you can go to grocery stores, or you can go to grocery stores on your designated alphabet day. The question is, will you be allowed to leave your house generally, like for exercise? You can exercise on any day of the week, not just your shopping day.
That's correct. That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just making sure the people just needing clarity on that. Are you allowed to leave your house for any other reason? If you are working from home and it's mandatory to work from home and you've exercised, can you leave your house for any other reason between the hours that is permissible to leave your house?
Well, you can attend it at the permitted businesses, like we've said, the grocery stores. You can go and get your vaccination. You can go and get your COVID test. There's also exceptions with respect to persons that perhaps are checking in on elderly loved ones, elderly neighbors. In those circumstances, then you would also be able to be permitted to leave your house.
And you can also go to the restaurant to take pickup.
Yeah, that's correct.
Pick up food. Okay,
That's correct.
that's good. And that's on any day of the week. You don't have
Correct.
to wait till your name day.
Correct. So if during the curfew, the following restrictions apply: you should not visit anybody's home except for in the case of emergency, if it's minor children that need to be transported from one home to another pursuant to the parents' legal agreements. If you're a caregiver or a person providing medical assistance to assist, elderly or vulnerable relatives or neighbors, a veterinary surgeon for essential medical care of pets, and persons that are making deliveries pursuant to Schedule 4 of the regs.
Okay, so Minister, just you talked about it really quickly. I just want to go back because I'm seeing that we're getting quite a lot of questions about caregivers. People who are caregivers to others outside of their home, they can go to work. Is that correct?
If you are a caregiver or a person providing medical assistance to a member in their household, you can, yes, because you'll recall under the regs as well, there are carve-outs for healthcare. Let me read that for you. So yes, if you are a caregiver, then you are permitted to provide that particular service. And then likewise, with respect to healthcare, under schedule, I think it's schedule 1, which are healthcare. It's under healthcare professionals, the people that are exempted from the curfew. Yes, schedule 1. Any registered health professional, ambulance driver, or crew, or staff of a healthcare facility, whether employed by the Bermuda Hospital Board, residential care or nursing home, or otherwise, such as a personal home caregiver, or other staff of Bermuda Hospital Board. They are in Schedule 1, so they are exempt from the nighttime curfew. And then likewise, the provision that I just read to you concerning a person who is assisting an elderly, a caregiver or person providing medical assistance, those persons. So there's restrictions on visitation except for in those classifications under section 13 that I just read, such as a caregiver or person providing medical assistance.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for that information, Minister Wilson. Minister Ming.
Yeah.
On the water, what's the curfew for people who are going to be on the water?
The curfew for the recreational building is 7 p.m.
Thank you. And can anyone go to the vegetable market?
In terms of the farmers and yes.
Okay, and I have a question about, let me just find that question. Nannies, live-in nannies. Okay, let me just quickly go to that. Are live-out nannies allowed to go to their employers' homes, or do they need to apply for exemption? This is for live-out nannies.
I'll let the minister speak to the exemption process, but if they fit within the circumstance that I spoke about concerning providing care for an elderly or vulnerable relative or vulnerable person or caregiver, that's a separate situation. But for live-out nannies, I'll leave the minister to speak to that because presumably they would have to apply for an exemption, but I'll leave her to speak to that because it's not provided for in the regulations because they are not members of the same household.
Minister May?
Surely, these persons would, because it's not covered within the regulations, Aderonka, they would have to apply for an exemption, and the team that receives it would have to vet it and have a review to see if it's worthy of getting the exemption approval.
Thank you. When will nurseries and daycare centers be allowed to open?
At this point, we are looking at the phases based on the data. We are not holding fast to dates. It's based on the data. We're looking at what our reproduction number is, what our positivity rate is, what our hospitalization rate is. Those are the parameters that we're looking at before we will make any determinations as to moving into the next phases. The opening of daycare centers would be in our phase 2, but we don't have a finite date as to when that will be because it is all subject to the data and the position that we are in with respect to the control of the outbreaks, the R factor, the real-time reproduction number, and our hospitalizations.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious of our time. I said we were going to be here for half an hour, and it's 8:10. We'll just take a few more questions. Let me see. Are jet skis allowed on the water?
We're clear on the boating part, but I'll leave that one for the Minister of Health because we do, I'm gonna defer that to you, Minister of Health.
I would say jet skis are recreational watercraft, Minister.
So I guess that would, if a person was riding it by themselves, Minister of Health?
I actually think Assistant Commissioner Weeks just answered that. They are recreational boating, classified as a recreational boating, so they would be permitted to do so. Obviously, there's no mixing of households, so if it's a two-seater, then there would be, it would be prohibited for them to have another person on the craft if they were not of the same household.
Excellent, thank you. Another question, is TCD open?
And Aranka, I know that there's been a list that's been circulated of public premises under the government that are open and closed. I wouldn't know offhand if TCD is one of those, but I know that the government has come out with a list. I think there was something as recently as this weekend that showed which offices and which establishments under the government were open and closed. I don't know that offhand.
Okay, excellent. All right, just quickly looking at some other questions that are coming in. How long will these new restrictions be in place? I'll invite either minister.
I feel like I've been hogging the mic, Minister Ming. Do you want to take that? The restrictions, as I said a few moments ago, Anaranka, right now, in order to look at the next phases, we have to look at the data. So it's very difficult for us to say we will have these restrictions in place for a finite period, say 7 days, because we don't know what the data will show in 7 days. We need to consider the data first and foremost, the level of hospitalizations, the real-time reproduction number, our positivity rate. All of those matters feature into how we will move to the next phases. Those discussions are ongoing, and there'll be more information presented probably by the Premier on Sunday at his press conference with respect to those findings. But you've heard the Premier mention it, I think, even as recently as last week, Tuesday, at our press conference, that the movement of the various phases is all contingent upon the data. We're going to be data driven as to when we move into the next phases.
Okay. I say let's do maybe one or two more questions before we wind down. It says, I just got a notification about TCD and they'll be putting out more information to the public so that they can know exactly what the operating hours will be and how they can get service. People are encouraged to book online at TCD and register their vehicles online, and TCD will be open on April the 26th. So people who don't have internet access, Minister Ming, how do they apply for exemption? How can they apply?
If they don't have internet access at all,
Yes.
I guess they can produce a letter and bring it to the Ministry of National Security. But we generally are not, encouraging. We have our own staff members who are working remotely at this time. So if there's some way that it could be sent to us electronically, we would be appreciative of that. There is, we also have our group email box, which is emogroup@gov.bm. But we really would appreciate an electronic medium as opposed to relying on someone to be in the office, because we too are under the mandatory work from home rule.
Excellent. And just checking quickly for other questions. Here's a question. What if which follows on, I think, from what we just answered. What if I have internet issues? Can a technician come to my house?
In the permitted, there was a section for utilities, and IT was supported in that, but I think you still need to remember that the physical distancing, the mastering, all that the Minister of Health has already spoke about, those come into play.
Okay. Can you advise if retail businesses like MoneyGram and Western Union will be permitted to open?
They are covered in this particular set of regulations under money services. That means money service businesses. The owner or operator of a money service business shall ensure that only one customer at a time shall be permitted to enter the premises.
Thank you. Are courier services allowed to fully open? And if so, are we going by shopping days names, or will they be allowed to deliver all packages? So basically the question is around the operation of courier services.
There's a schedule in the regs that do provide for deliveries, and they shall be made between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And it also relates to services on behalf of to government departments, urgent deliveries, et cetera, and services that are listed in the first schedule. And then there's protocols that are outlined with respect to couriers and delivery services, which are similar to what was in place last year, which is calling ahead to make sure that the delivery can be received. A person making the delivery to a private residence shall not enter the customer's homes. They should leave the goods outside of the customer's door and telephone or otherwise inform the customer that the delivery has been made.
Excellent, thank you. I'm just quickly looking to see if there's anything that we have not covered in the questions that we have. Minister, this is one for you, not so much around the regs. It was mentioned by the Minister of Health that mobile vaccines will be happening soon for the homebound. Is there a time frame for this?
As part of our vaccination rollout, that is something that we are certainly considering. As we would have announced last week, we are trying to implement the delivery of vaccinations. So the Bermuda College, starting from last week, Thursday, opened up and extended their hours to 11 o'clock p.m., as well as operating on Sunday. So we are continuing to operationalize more hours and availability at the Bermuda College. However, we are certainly conscious of members of the public requiring sick and shut-in persons requiring immunization, and we are working to mobilize a unit that will take it to the community. That's correct.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. Do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to share as we conclude our time together?
Thank you, Anna-Marca. Oh, go ahead.
I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for the questions, and hopefully we've given you information and have been able to keep you informed on the changes and what you can expect tomorrow. But I'd like to say that the overarching message that we leave is that we are still not mixing households. And I think it's important that we remember that as we move about and as we consider what our day looks like. We are not mixing households. We're telling you it's strictly prohibited, and that we all need to be responsible for our families and our communities.
Thank you, Minister May. Minister Wilson?
Actually, I can't add to that. I think the emphasis on the non-mixing of households, cannot emphasize the importance of that. Part of the issue that's gotten us to where we are is the mixing of households, and we've seen the outbreaks as a result of that. Unfortunately, that has caused severe numbers of hospitalizations as well as deaths. as a result of this outbreak. We certainly do not want to overwhelm our healthcare system, and in particular, our hospital. With almost 40 persons in hospital now, we have to be conscious about that. And I think that we all have a part to play with respect to this. We can have a relatively normal, quote unquote, summer if we take steps to follow the public health guidelines, get tested, as well as immunize. That's the only thing that's going to get us out of this is full immunization. We've increased the capacity for immunization and testing, and we're encouraging members of the public to utilize that. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for your time this evening. I just want to add that if people want to have a look at the regs themselves, they should go to bermudalaws.bm, bermudalaws.bm. They have the regs published, and you can open them and review them closely for yourself. Minister Ming, Minister Wilson, thank you very much for your time this evening, and good night, Bermuda.